Greetings, everyone, and welcome to again, yes, to Semiotics, an introduction to semiotics, signs. And this is a great book by Thomas Sebeck, which is, he was the seminal author about signs and semiotics. So this was his second edition of this work called Signs, an Introduction to Semiotics. And today we're going to be reading from chapter 7. And, oh, jeez, a second. Let me get this thing here dialed up real quick. Come on, there it is. Interact, there we go. Alrighty. So what we were going to do is go over chapter 7. We had gone over some of the introduction here. Before we do go into it, we're going to go over one last section here on nonverbal communication. But in the last stream, we did go over the basic notions of semiotics. We defined the signs, the 6 properties, or the 6 classes of signs or types of signs, and we looked over their structural properties, the difference between a representation and semiosis, the signs, and the representation of the signs where we build knowledge and meaning from. And nonverbal communications we're at today. And let's start right there. And then, of course, the topic of the night will be fetish signs, which will be going over the origin of fetishism as deviation, the fetish in psychology and sexology, and the fetish in semiotics. So let's get to first section we needed to get to was 3 nonverbal communication. And here we go. All right, we got the Spikinator now. Okay. Can't keep up. But the logo is familiar, so we're all good. All right. So let's clear that out there, and we should be ready to go. So now we're on to nonverbal communications. Yeah, this is here's your sign. Yeah, you're right on, Nubs, you're right on the mark with this stream here. Nonverbal communication. One of the main targets of a biological study of semiosis is nonverbal communication. Indeed, it is the default mode of communication. Only the members of the species Homo sapiens are capable of communicating simultaneously or in turn by both nonverbal and verbal means. The expression by verbal means is equivalent to some such expression as by means of speech, or by means of script, or by means of a sign language. Example given for use in a deaf group. That are each manifestations of any prerequisite natural language with which human beings are singularly endowed. So we have a natural language as human beings that no other animals are endowed with. Yeah, man or woman. Remember these texts here. This is in philosophy. They just say human beings a lot. For some reason, it's just always come to be that. Maybe it's easier than writing man and woman all the time. But in this context, it's synonymous with man and woman. Again, this isn't a legal text we're reading here. This is philosophy, so if it were legal, I would look at it differently. Yeah, but in this context, it's not. So just take it, the meaning in the context we're reading today, this is synonymous with man and woman. There's no distinction in this context for this text we're reading today. So let's continue. However, not all humans are literate or can even speak. Infants normally do develop a capacity for speaking, but only gradually. Some adults never acquire speech, and others lose speech as a result of some trauma. Example given is a stroke, or in a consequence of aging. Such conditions notwithstanding, humans lacking a capacity to verbalize, speak, write, or sign can, as a rule, continue to communicate non-verbally. The word language is sometimes used in common parlance in an inappropriate way to designate a certain nonverbal communicative device. Such may be confusing in the context where, if at all, language should be used only in a technical sense, in reference to humans. Yes, so as we said here, let me pull this up on the screen as I'm talking about it. Babies communicate a lot nonverbally, and as we said, that's the default rule is nonverbally, right? So babies would have naturally, of course, that would be the first way they would communicate, would be nonverbally. And I think we're saying here, indeed, the default mode of communication is nonverbal communication. So yes, babies would be the first one, that would be their default way of communicating. So let's see. Such may be confusing in the context where, if at all, language should be used only in a technical sense in reference to humans. Metaphorical uses such as body language, the language of flowers, the language of bees, favorite on Paul's Enslaved show, ape language, or the like, are to be avoided. All right, all right, them's in the house. Nonverbal communication takes place within an organism or between two or more organisms. Within an organism, participators in communicative acts may involve, as message sources or destinations or both, on rising integration levels, cellular organelles, cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. Can you believe that? Nonverbal communication takes place within an organism or between two or more organisms. But within an organism, the participators in communicative acts may involve as message sources or destinations, or both, on rising integration levels. Cellular organelles. Those are the parts inside of the cell. Cells. Cells organize into tissues. The tissues organize into organs. The organs then are organized into organ systems. In addition, basic features of the whole biological organization conducted non-verbally in the milieu intérieur include protein synthesis, metabolism, hormone activity, transmission of nervous impulses, and so forth. Wow. Protein synthesis is a form of nonverbal communication. Metabolism is nonverbal communication. Hormone activity is nonverbal communication. And when you start to think about, oh, I forgot here, we got to pause for US 8. US 8. I was waiting for someone to respond on that. I missed that. Okay. Back to the lesson here. The transmission of nervous impulses. So your transmissions of nerves, even a pain signal, is considered nonverbal communication. Let's let this sink in for a second. Nonverbal communication as it takes place within an organism. All these different things. Message sources and destinations are both on rising levels of integration, integrating into higher and higher levels, rising. Well, believe it or not, there are semiotic solutions to that, and we're going to get to that. But tonight we're kind of focusing more on the titillating aspects of it. But let's continue, because you'll probably pick up something along the way. You know, pain and pleasure can't coexist, so where we have pleasure, the pain must subside. All right, cellular organelle, cells, tissues. All right, so we see the organizational structure as rising levels of integration as cells, you know, the cellular organelles come together to form cells. Cells come together to form tissues. Tissues come together to form organs. Organs come together to form organ systems, and so on, till we get to organisms. And those organisms come together to form families. Families come together to form communities. Communities come together to form cities, and cities come together to form states and nations, etc., etc., till we have, at what level you see as the organizational systems rise on the levels of integration. So that's a perspective we want to focus on when we're thinking of signs in semiotics. All right, let's continue. In addition, basic features of the whole biological organization conducted non-verbally in the milieu intérieur include protein synthesis. All right, so we read this. Communication on this level is usually studied, among other sciences, by subdomains of biosemiotics, labeled protosemiotics, microsemiotics, cytosemiotics, or comprehensively endosemiotics. So let's look at this. So biosemiotics, for the meaning of the signs or the communications inside of the biological system. Proto, right, the beginnings, the initial default semiotics are microsemiotics, so at the microbe level, the cellular level perhaps, or below the cellular level. Cytosemiotics is at the cellular level, or comprehensively endo, so the inside semiotics, remember the internal communications. Internal communication takes place by means of chemical, thermal, mechanical, and electrical sign operations, or semiosis, constituting of unimaginable busy trafficking. Take, as an example, a single human body, which consists of some 25 trillion cells, or about 2,000 times the number of living earthlings. And consider further that these cells have direct or indirect connections with one another through messages delivered by signs in diverse modalities. The sheer density of such transactions is staggering. Only a minuscule fraction is known to us, let alone understood. Interior messages include information about the significance of one somatic scheme for all of the others. For each overall control grid, such as the immune system, and for the entire integrative regulatory circuitry, especially the brain. Wow, the earliest forms of interorgasmic communication in our biosphere are found in prokaryotes, that is, mostly one-celled creatures, lacking a nucleus. These are commonly called bacteria. In the last 4 decades, bacterial associations have come to be viewed as being of 3 sorts. Localized teams, a single global superorganism, and those in interactions with eukaryotes, which are familiar life forms composed of cells having a membrane-bound nucleus, notably animals and plants, but also several others. Localized teams of great complexity exist everywhere on Earth. There are intestinal bacteria, dental plaque bacteria, bacterial mats, and others. There is, of course, a very large bacterial population in both soils and the sludge at the bottom of bodies of waters. Such teams busily draw upon information fitting particular sets of circumstances, especially as regards the exchange of genetic information. A local bacterial team can adopt sophisticated communicative survival strategies. That is, it can function for a certain period of time as a singular multicellular organism. And that's it. So, see, the strategies that they can do, they can adopt a sophisticated communicative and survival strategies, those bacterial slimes, that it can function for a certain period of time as a single multicellular organism. So yeah, you're not just grabbing that one little piece of sludge. It's functioning for a period of time as a single multicellular organism now. Incredible. So parts of it can hold on tight and everything. Yeah, so here we go. As we were talking about here, Nubs, I need to bring that on screen. Is it on screen? There we go. Yeah, when you clean them, that sludge, it can be, well, here, we're going to read about it right now. It's sending these signals. Bacteria have the potential to act in concert. That is, in the manner of a boundless planetary aggregation, as a sort of vast biological communications network, an internet, so to speak. This ensemble has been characterized as a superorganism possessing more basic information than the brain of any mammal, and whose myriad parts are capable of shifting and sharing information to accommodate to any and all circumstances. Wow. The bacterial superorganism created environmental conditions conducive to the evolution of an entirely different life form. The eukaryotes, bacteria, exploited the eukaryotes as habitats, as well as using them for vehicles to advance their own further dispersal. Indeed, eukaryotes evolved in a consequence of a succession of intimate intracellular associations among prokaryotes. Biologists call such associations symbioses. But as these crucially entail diverse nonverbal communicative processes, they might more generally be characterized as forms of biological semioses. So they're saying here biologists call them as symbioses when we have intracellular associations among prokaryotes. I hope I'm saying that right. Let's see. Yeah, the fish tanks, yeah. Absolutely. And I've seen turtles, they can sense like invisible ghost shrimp. Somehow I know it's like, I don't know if it's electrical or they smell them or what, but they can find them. I'll read this one. It doesn't fit on the screen. It says, I know if I see a constage start to die, there's something wrong with the tank itself because of some bios. Yep, exactly. So when things are out of balance, then you start to see the manifestation of that, right? Yeah, it's amazing to me to watch a turtle find those shrimp when they're hiding. It's like, how do you even see it or know it's there? It's the ghost shrimp, and they're like invisible, but they get them. We got a lot of cool animals here in Florida. They're everywhere. All right. Biologists call such associations symbioses, right? That's what we're saying, symbioses. But now look at it from a different perspective. Oh yeah. We'll get that iced up there. We haven't got to the juicy part yet, so you might want to get a little relaxed. I made sure I have myself a good adult drink ready to go here for this one too, because it's going to get a little titillating in a while. Wow, you have 100 goldfish that are 4 to 5 inch long, as well as 2 plecostomuses that are at least a foot long in each tank, which is tied to my slick. So aquaponics, yeah, that's so nice when you get that full cycle going like that. I've thought about doing that kind of thing too. And the peacock bass, nice. Red-tailed catfish, yeah. So interesting thing there to keep that balance going. And it's some of those systems though are so well adapted to strange kind of like ponds and easy environments, I guess, to replicate in the crudest form, that you can actually get a fully symbiotic system going there. But I think what we could look at it is maybe let's look at it from a semiotic form. So they're saying instead of considering it a symbioses, but as these crucially entail diverse, nonverbal, communicative processes, They might more generally be characterized as forms of biological semioses. Biosemioses between bacterial entities started more than 1,000 million years ago and are thus at the root of all communication. Think about that. Both in form and in the variety of their communicative transactions, animals are the most diverse of living creatures. Estimates of the number of animal species range from about 3 million up to more than 30 million. Since the behavior of every species differs from that of every other, most of which are in any case scarcely fathomed, it will be evident that only a few general observations can be made here. Animals communicate through different channels or combinations of media. Any form of energy propagation can, in fact, be exploited for purposes of message transmission. Yeah, 1,000 million years ago. The convoluted ramifications of these can only be hinted at here. Take acoustic events as one set of illustrations. Since sound emission and sound reception are so ubiquitous in human communication, it may come as something of a surprise how rare sound is in the wider scheme of the biological existence. In fact, the great majority of animals are both deaf and dumb. True hearing and functional sound production is prevalent, although by no means universal, only amongst the two most advanced phyla, the invertebrate arthropods and the vertebrate chordates, which we also belong. Among the former, the insects far outnumber the rest of the animal kingdom. Sound is most widespread in the orthoptera among these, including grasshoppers, especially the katydids, mantises, cockroaches, and the cycads of the order Homoptera, possessing the most complex of the arthropodian sound-producing mechanisms. They also have well-developed hearing organs on the forepart of their abdomen. The Clotera, or beetles, contain quite a number of noisy forms. By contrast, sound use is rather rare among the arachnids, which include ticks, mites, scorpions, and spiders. Well, they weren't, I don't think he was throwing out numbers. It was actually pretty precise. If you think about it, 1 million is 10 to the 6, so 3 more. So it's 10. I don't know why you didn't say it's a billion. 1,000 million, right? That's a billion. Well, again, it's not a math text, it's philosophy. So they try to, they want to develop their words fully. I don't know. This guy's a pretty good author, though. You got to hand it to him. I mean, this is, he's the old school. This guy was born 1920. So just give him that. You got to kind of take the context where he came from, grew up through the Depression. All right. As we move on to the vertebrates, it becomes useful to distinguish not only nonverbal from verbal, but also non-vocal from vocal communication, and to indoctrinate yet further discriminations with the advent of tools. Height of indoctrination? Nah. Today is the height of indoctrination. I disagree on that one. Man, indoctrination of the 20s was nothing like now. Now it's almost ridiculous. I say now, the worst part of the indoctrination is it's the slaves are angry at the people trying to free them now. That's the worst part. Supersonic noise with its clouds, as long as I don't have to hear it. But yeah, I get you. Yeah, the mantis. And there's another one, the snapping shrimp. They make a pretty loud snap with their thing. The vocal mechanism that works by means of a current of air passing over the vocal cords, setting them into vibration, seems to be confined to ourselves and with distinctions to our nearest relatives, the other mammals, the birds endowed with a syrinx, the reptiles, and the amphibians. Although some fish do use wind instruments as well, they do so without the reed constituted by our vocal cords. So far as we know, no true vocal performances are found outside the land vertebrates or their marine descendants, such as whales. Oh yeah, I guess you could say that. So indoctrination, in contrast, actually was like a breath of fresh air. Now, if we can only have that, yeah, dogs can talk. They can talk without saying anything too, just by their nonverbal facial expression and head bobs. Humans communicate via many channels, only one of which is the acoustic. Acoustic communication among us may be both verbal and vocal, such as, of course, very commonly as we speak, but so-called alternative sign languages, developed by emitters receivers to be employed on special occasions or during times when speech is not permitted or is rendered difficult by special circumstances, are, though generally verbal, non-vocal. So alternative sign languages could be considered verbal but not vocal. Wow, interesting, huh? In this category are included North and South American Indian Sign Languages, Australian Aboriginal Sign Languages, monastic communication systems actualized under a religious ban of silence, and certain occupational or performance sign languages, such as in pantomime theater or some varieties of ballet. What about what's it called? Catchers and pitchers, right? Yeah. Unvoiced signing. Unvoiced signing may also be freely chosen in preference to speech when secrecy is wanted. For instance, there we go, baseball catcher prefers to keep the batter ignorant of the next type of pitch to be made, or if a criminal attempts to keep certain messages from witnesses. More complex sign languages used for secrecy are those employed by religious cults or secret societies where ritual codes are meant to manipulate problematic social relationships between insiders versus outsiders. Acoustic communication in humans may, moreover, be somatic or artifactual. This is well illustrated by contrasting humming or so-called whistle talk produced by the body alone with drum signaling, which requires some sort of percussion instrument or at least a tree trunk. Sometimes verbal acoustic messages, with or without speech, are conveyed at a remove from behind masks through inanimate figures, such as puppets or marionettes, or through other performing objects. Again, acoustic somatic communication might be vocal, like a fearsome shriek, or non-vocal, like snapping one's fingers to summon a waiter. Furthermore, in humans, non-verbal communication in the acoustic mode in all known communities has been artfully elaborated into a large variety of musical realizations. These might be accompanied by a verbal text, as in a song, or crooned without lyrics, or produced by all sorts of musical instruments, or embedded in an enormously complex, multi-dimensional work of art, like an opera. Thus, while the overture to Mozart's Don Giovanni is a pure sonata allegro, the enchanting Act 1 duet between Don and Zerlina, La Laciderum del Mono, immediately following a secco, purely verbal recitative, gives way to a melody solo, then voices intertwining, climaxing into a okay, yes. Not a big opera fan. All right, we get all this stuff here, right? There's so many examples. This guy, well, he's going to, run his point down. All right, let's get back to where we are here. Okay, now we're back on track. The functional advantages or disadvantages of the different channels of communication. So just to briefly paraphrase what he was saying earlier. No, I think the tree trunk is like a log drum, is what he meant. But you may be right. It might be the Sasquatch. But what they're saying here, the different channels of communication, like for instance, in an opera, there's a message to get across, and they give the same message across through different channels. So there's a singing line, there's words to the vocal line. So the song is going to say it's a sad scene, right? So the song is going to be a sad song. The lyrics will be sad. The actor on stage will be expressing sadness. The scenery, everything will be adapted to express sadness. So even if you didn't understand what the music was saying and the melody, or if you didn't understand the language being spoken, or one channel or another is going to get through to you to realize this is sad. And that's the basis of different channels of communications, both all delivering the same message simultaneously, is what the opera is when it says a multi-dimensional communicative format. So the functional advantages or disadvantages of the different channels of communication have never been fully analyzed. But certain statements can be made about acoustic communication in these respects, which, other things being equal, apply to animals, including man. There's your man instead of human. A clear advantage, in contrast, for instance, to molecular traces such as pheromones, so we're getting that one, chemical messengers, which tend to persist over time, is the short-lived character of sound. To counteract this transience, humans eventually had to recourse to writing, and more recently, introduce all sorts of sound recording devices. This apparent defect may be outweighed by several advantages sound has over other media. For one thing, sound is independent of light, and therefore can be used day or night. For another, it fills the entire space around the source. Accordingly, it does not require a straight line of connection with the destination. Moreover, it involves a minuscule expenditure of energy. In most animals, the body alone produces sound. Ordinarily, no tool is requisite. In the case of humans, it can also be modulated to vary from intimate whisper to long-distance shouting. Summarizing what is known of the acoustic behavior of vertebrates, we can only scratch the surface here. Among fish, as the insects, sound production seems to occur, but sporadically. Almost all instances are in the telosts, and their methods are of three distinct kinds: by stridulation of one hard part against the other, grinding of the teeth, by expulsion of a gas, or by vibrating their gas bladder. Some fish hiss like a cat. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's the grunt fish. There's croakers. Yeah, there's a lot of fish that make noises. And of course, fish can hear. Yeah, they sure can. Most amphibians cannot hear and seldom produce any sound other than frogs. Yeah, frogs and toads are quite noisy. Reptiles can, and few produce sounds. So crocodiles roar and grunt. Yep. All right, so let's just get past this stuff and get to the meat of the thing here. Before we start talking about the dolphins. All right, all carnivores. Book length treatment. Okay, so we get apes here. Hang on. Here we go. Oh, this is so cute. All carnivores, dogs, cats, dogs, hyenas, etc., as well as the primates, more or less vigorously vocalize, including man's closest relatives, the apes. But the characteristic performances of these creatures are both so rich and varied, from the relatively silent orangutans to the remarkably diverse singing gibbons, that describing them would demand a book-length treatment. Yeah, this needs to be on screen while I read this part here. US 8. Instead of attempting to even sketch these here, it's worth emphasizing that apes do not communicate verbally in the wild. And that, furthermore, even the most strenuous undertakings to inculcate any manifestation of any natural language in captive apes, contrary to insistent claims made in the media, have uniformly failed. Don't teach the ape to talk. Attempts to teach language-like skills to apes or to any other animals, such as captive marine mammals or pet birds, have been extensively criticized on the grounds that the clever Hans effect or fallacy might have been at work, as mentioned above. Since this phenomenon has profound implications for, among other possible dyads, man-animal communications of all sorts, some account seems in order here. In brief, a stallion named Hans in Berlin at the turn of the century was reputed to be able to do arithmetic and perform comparably impressive verbal feats, responding non-verbally to spoken or written questions put to him by tapping out the correct answers with his foot. Ingenious tests eventually proved that the horse was in fact reacting to non-verbal cues unwittingly given by the questioner. Ever since that demonstration of how unintended cueing can affect an experiment on animal behavior, alert and responsible scientists have tried to exclude the sometimes highly subtle perseverance of the effect. The singing navy monkey, the singing gibbon, the singing gibbon, navy gibbon. That was his rank, was gibbon, singing gibbon. And then we have the smart monkey was your cousin. Oh, Lord. Yeah, this is some pretty cool stuff here. All right, so it later turned out two variants of the clever Hans fallacy. Those based on self-deception, indulged by the Hans owner, trainer, and other interrogators, and those performances with wonder horses, talking dogs, and learned pigs. We see a lot of, I guess you could call them learned pigs. Usually they're in cars. Or geese, based on deliberate trickery, performed by stage magicians and common con artists over many centuries. Deceptive, nonverbal signaling pervades the world of animals and men, and animals' basic shapes of unwitting deception are known as mimicry. Yeah. Well, we're getting to the good part. Hopefully Sly will be here when we get to the good part. I wish I knew there was a way to send out other notifications. I don't know if my notifications even make it out. All right, let's continue here. This is usually taken to include the emulation of dangerous models by innocuous mimics in terms of visible or auditory signals or distasteful scents in order to fool predators. In human, deceptive communications in daily life have been studied by psychologists and, on the stage, by professional magicians. Various body parts may be mendaciously entailed, singly or in combination. Gaze, pupil dilation, tears, winks, facial expression, smile or frown, gesture, posture, voice, etc. A consideration of mainly acoustic events thus far should by no means be taken for neglect of other channels in which nonverbal messages can be encoded, among them chemical, optical, tactile, electric, and thermal. The chemical channel antedates all others in evolution and is omnipresent in all organisms. Bacterial communication is exclusively chemical. Right. Etc. or erection. Etc. Yeah, we're getting to that part. I think we're just about there. This was longer than I thought for nonverbal, but it's actually been pretty enlightening. Plants interact with other plants via the chemical channel and with animals, especially insects, but humans as well, in addition to the usual contact channels by optical means. I also heard plants interact with an electrical channel too. while the intricacies of plant communication, technically known as phytosemiosis, cannot be further explored here. Thanks. Mention should at least be made of two related fields of interest: the pleasant minor semiotic artifice of floral arrangements. Wow. The semiotics of floral arrangements. And the vast domain of gardens as major nonverbal and semiotic constructs. Formal gardens, landscape gardens, vegetable gardens, water gardens, coral gardens, and Zen gardens are all remarkable nonverbal contrivances, which are variously cultivated from Malinowski's Trobriand's to traditional Japanese Kare Sensui, the dry garden. Yeah, the rock gardens in the Japanese are cool. To Islamic lands, China, and notably so in France and Britain. Smell, olfaction, odor, scent, aroma, is used for purposes of communication, crucially, say, by sharks and hedgehogs, social insects such as bees, termites, and ants, and such social mammals as wolves and lions. It is less important in birds and primates, which rely largely on sight. In modern societies, smell has been roundly commercialized in the olfactory management of food and toiletry commodities, concerned with the repulsive body odor and the effects of tobacco products. Perfumes are often associated with love and sexual potency. The body by itself can be a prime tool for communication, verbal as well as nonverbal. Thus in animals, it is well known that dogs and cats display their bodies in acts of submission and intimidation, as famously pictured in Charles Darwin's 1872 book on the expressions of the emotions in man and animals. So that was Charles Darwin's other book. Yeah, we use smell more than we think, but not nearly as much as the other animals, is what it's getting at, like wolves and sharks. They really use smell. I mean, sharks can smell like, I don't know, a tiny bit of blood and parts per billion or something in the seawater, so they're pretty slick. All right, so Charles Darwin had an 1872 book on the expression of the emotions in man and animals. And there are many striking illustrations in Desmond Morris's 1969 field guide, The Human Zoo. Desmond Morris, he also wrote The Naked Ape, I think, didn't he? And in the photos assembled by Weldon Keyes, Keyes 1956, on how the human frame is brought habitually into play. Professional wrestling is popular entertainment masquerading as a sport that features two or a group of writhing bodies, groaning and grunting, pretending in a quasi-morality play of good versus evil to vie for victory. The players obviously interact with one another, but more subtly communicate with a live audience. Such performances differ from legitimate bouts involving boxing or collegiate wrestling, or sports like tennis matches, and group events such as soccer or cricket, in that the outcome of the contest is hardly in suspense. All right, we got Archangel for Tooth made it. Dance is one sophisticated art form that can express human thought and feeling through the instrumentality of the body in many genres and in many cultures. One of these is Western ballet, which intermingles sequences of hand and limb gestural exchanges with flowing body movements and a host of other nonverbal protocols that echo one another, like music, costumes, lighting, masks, scenery, wigs, etc. Dance and music usually accompany pantomime or dumb shows. Silent clowns or mimes supplement their body movements by suitable makeup and costuming. Facial expressions, pouting the curled lip, a raised eyebrow, crying, flaring nostrils, constitute a powerful, universal communication system, solo or in concert. Eye work, including gaze and mutual gaze, can be particularly powerful in understanding a range of quotidian vertebrate as well as human social behavior. Although the pupil response has been observed since antiquity, in the last couple of decades it has matured into a broad area of research called pupillometry. Among circus animal trainers, it has long been an unarticulated rule to carefully watch the pupil movements of their charges, for instance, tigers, to ascertain their mood alteration. Bears, on the contrary, are reported to be unpredictable, hence dangerous, precisely because they lack the pupil display, as well as owing to their inelastic muzzle, which thus cannot telegraph an imminent attack. It's interpersonal relationships between human couples. A dilation in pupil size acts, in effect, as an unwitting message transmitted to the other person or an object of an intense, often sexually toned, interest. Okay. Many voluminous dictionaries, glossaries, manuals, and source books exist to explicate and illustrate the design and meaning of brands, emblems, insignia, signals, symbols, and other signs in the literal, tangible sense, including speech-fixing signs such as script and punctuation, numerical signs, phonetic symbols, signatures, trademarks, logos, watermarks, heraldic devices, astrological signs, signs of alchemy, Kabbalistic and magical signs, talismans, technical and scientific signs, as in chemistry, pictograms, and other such imagery, many of them used extensively in advertising. Regulatory signs, no smoking, direction signs deployed at airports, passport control, men, women, or in hospitals, pediatrics. International road signs, no passing, are commonly supplemented by icons under the pressure of the need for communication across language barriers, certain physical impairments, or comparable handicaps. Right. The labyrinthine ramifications of optical communication in the world of animals and for humanity are boundless and need to be dealt with separately. Such sciences as astronomy and the visual arts have since prehistoric times naturally and mainly unfolded in the optical channel. Alterations of the human body and its physical appearance, from non-permanent, such as body painting or theatrical makeup or routine hair service, to quasi-permanent metamorphoses by dint of procedures such as body sculpture, for example, the past Chinese lotus foot or Western tight lacing customs, infibulation, cicatrization, or tattooing, and more generally, plastic surgery, all convey messages, frequently as reconstruction, cosmetic in intent, in female breast size by nonverbal means. The art of mummy painting in Roman Egypt was intended to flourish surrogates for the head by which to facilitate silent communication of a deceased individual during his or her passage to the afterlife. All right. Let's see. This is a good one here. I think this should help us. All right. The study of spatial and temporal. Oh, we're going to get in the tit parts. I can't believe this part's as long as it is. I just want to get this part here. I think this is good. No, this isn't. They're going to belabor these points here. All right, cool. We're done with this. So let's get to the good stuff now. Here we go. Okay, everybody. We've arrived. Yeah, we're going to get deep into the tits now. Okay. Chapter 7. Long-awaited Chapter 7. Fetish Signs. As everyone can ascertain from the Oxford English Dictionary, the English vocab fetish was directly adopted from the Portuguese substantive feticho, charm, sorcery, Spanish, hechizo, both from the Latin factitious, meaning artificial, skillfully contrived. Originally, the term was applied to any of the objects used by the people of the Guinea coast and neighboring regions as talismans. We're gonna get Pay attention, everyone, and keep out your number 7 Esquire pencil and take notes. How many people we got in the room here? Yeah, this is going to be epic here. Okay, so originally a term was applied to any of the objects of fetish, right, used by the people of the Guinea coast and neighboring regions as talismans, amulets, or other means of enchantment, or regarded by them with superstitious dread. Portuguese sailors allegedly minted the appellation in the 15th century when they observed the veneration that West Coast Africans had for such objects which they wore on their person. The earliest English citation, as further reported in the OED, dates from a 1613 work by Purchas, Pilgrimage. Hereon were set many strawen rings called fatizos, or gods. Writers on anthropology, following Bross's 1760, began using fetish in the wider sense of an inanimate object being worshipped by savages on account of its supposed inherent magical powers, or as its animation by a spirit. More generally still, fetish referred to something irrationally reverenced. All right. In 1869, McClellan, who framed totemism as a theoretical topic, also invented the notorious formula: totemism is fetishism plus exogamy and matrilineal descent. Jesus. But Levi Strauss, 1960, whatever. But see Levi Strauss, Levi Strauss, whatever. Van Wing then wrote, 1938, an offside amplification about the fetish as a metaphor, metonym opposition. So metonym was something like a change in names. So if you were to say someone's a hired gun, it doesn't mean they're a gun. It means they're a hit man. And the metonym being a hired gun, it refers, it's a change of name. It means something else, but you change the name to gun, but it's referring to something that the hitman is going to use pretty much ubiquitously. So you call them a hired gun, but it's a metonym. So it's a special type of metaphor, opposition, right? The purpose of this chapter is to look at fetish as an example of semiosis that overlaps several sign categories. Although fetishism is common among mammals, it is a particularly good example of the fecundity of human semiosis involving the body, the mind, and the culture simultaneously. Well, euphemisms is not... All right, let's make some distinctions here. I like these, the things that you're mentioning here. So, almost, but those are maybe euphemisms for what we're trying to say here. So when we say it's murder to law enforcement, right, you could probably say, when you could say he's a pig, it doesn't mean he's literally a four-legged farm animal. It means he's a tyrant that likes to beat up innocent people, right? That would be a metonym when he's a dirty pig, right? He's not a pig, but he's dirty like a pig in a metaphorical sense. So that would be more like it's not a euphemism. You're not just calling a rape cage a jail. You're just making it sound less offensive than it really is. You're mitigating the offensiveness of the impact of that statement. Whereas a metonym is a change of names of something totally different. So rape cage is just a higher level of jail. It's the same thing. It's just, jail just sounds like rape cage light. Whereas when you call a pig, it has nothing to do with a good peace officer, right? Even though they might have the same badge as one, it's a totally different thing. It's based on action and intent rather than a label. And that's what semiotics gets to. It's not about what you label something as, it's what it functions as. And you find a lot of that in the law too, where you'll have the legal stuff saying one thing, but the law says another. Law is based on intent, whereas the legal is just based on language that can be easily manipulated if it's not functionally tied to what its intent is. So yeah, jail on steroids, however you want to look at it, but it's a degree of severity by giving you those names, whereas a metonym is going to be something totally different. Like four-legged farm animals have nothing to do with law enforcement, yet somehow that name applies. Yeah, so rat. Okay, so someone that exactly. So a metonym is something like someone that's tattletales on somebody else. You can call them a rat, right? That's a metonym, especially a dirty rat. Okay, piece of shit, another metonym. Okay, so let's continue here. I want to focus on this here because here's some big words. Uncommon words, we'll call them. The purpose of this chapter is to look at fetish as an example of semiosis that overlaps several sign categories. Last time we went over the 6 categories. So this will overlap several of them. Although fetishism is common among mammals, it is a particularly good example of the fecundity. Fecundity is an abundance of generating ideas, of fertility, almost, you could say, right? Fecundity even sounds like fecundity. It's a good word. So fecundity means generating a wealth of ideas, something that's generative. Raining cats and dogs, yes, I think that is. And there's that's another kind of metaphor too. Fecundo, Latin, is that what it's from? Yeah, fecundo. Yeah, so fecundity. I like fecundity because in English the E is a schwa, so you can say fecundity. What are you trying? She's got her fecundity has produced a lot of offspring. That actually works in a sentence. Yeah, so that wouldn't apply at your place, Nub. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be a metonym there. It would be literal. Okay, so the fecundity of human semiosis, involving the body, the mind, and the culture simultaneously. And we say culture. I like the context. I think we got culture from, was it, I can't remember if it was from, I think it was Cassira. One of these philosophers we were reading in one of the other streams, but culture was nicely, dogma, I was really wondering about that. Fecundity, because it sure sounds like fecundity. It means to be, let's see, let me give you a full fecundity. Capable, producing or capable of producing an abundance of offspring or new growth, fertile, capable of becoming pregnant, a lush and fecund garden. And fecundity is the ability to produce many new ideas. The immense fecundity of his imagination made a profound impact on European literature. So it's a great word. Fertile, fecundity. We could look more into the roots of that too, but I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, so to speak. But culture was defined as, I remember this now. So in the terms of restatements of law, is to make sure the law is adapting to the needs of life, right? And that culture is it's a progressive, it's a positive progression for individual liberties. So for the culture is the positive progression for the people to have their individual liberties expressed. So that's where culture advances, right? So the more personal liberties, the more advanced your culture is. And whenever your personal liberties aren't expanding, your culture is not either. It would be digressing. I'll have to look back. I can't even remember which philosopher that was from, but it was a nicely encapsulated version of culture. I think it was Cassirer, if I'm not mistaken. All right, let's continue. The origin of fetishism as deviation. One fruitful way of classifying religions has been to ask, in the case of each, where is the divine, the object of religious responses, primarily sought and located? And what sort of response is primarily made to it? According to this principle of division, religions may be partitioned into three major groups: sacramental, prophetic, and mystical. Details of this were spelled out by Alston, 1967, following a suggestion by William James. But Auguste Comte, and Charles de Brosses specifically interpreted the fetish as a basis for their theories concerning the origin of religion. Fetish as a basis for their theories concerning the origin of religion. The divine in the sacramental religion is said to be chiefly sought in things which are thought of as capable of capturing natural forces, inanimate things, such as pieces of wood, relics of saints, statues, crosses, or food and drink, such as bread and wine, or baptismal water, or living things, such as the totemic animal of the group, the sacred cow, the sacred tree, or processes, such as the movements of the sacred dance. In very primitive forms of sacramental religion, when the object itself, perhaps possessing animate existence in and of itself, is responded to as divine, and that object has, in early anthropological practice, been designated a fetish. Such a fetish could be wrought to have positive effects, such as to heal or cure sickness, and even to induce erotic disposition, that is, to affect and alter natural social relations. Yeah, so there's some crazy stuff, yeah. The nuns of perpetual indulgence. All right, so clearly it was the assignment of the latter capability that led to the eventual espousal of the term in clinical and thence in legal discourse to describe the enhancement of sexual activity in the presence of a type of object which is, for others, not at all, or if so, but weakly, endowed with a compulsively sexual paraphiliac connotation. Gebhard, 1969, quite properly envisions the whole matter of fetishism as a graduated phenomenon. At one end of the range is slight preference. Next is strong preference. Next is a point where the fetish item is necessity to sexual activity. And at the terminal end of the range, the fetish item substitutes for a living sexual partner. Yikes. Indeed, as will become clear, sorting by degree is the only procedure that makes sense when the matter is viewed from the semiotic standpoint. There we go. So, do you get this here? The spectrum they're saying here of preferences, right? It says the whole matter of fetishism as a graduated phenomenon. So there's graduations. At one end of the graduated scale of the range is slight preference, then strong preference, then it's necessary for sexual activity, and then at the worst end of it, most extreme, it substitutes the sexual partner. Indeed, as will become clear, sorting by degree, the graduated degrees, is the only procedure that makes sense when the matter is viewed from the semiotic standpoint, which we are doing. No, the books are for research process, nubs. We're not going to buy that one. All right. The notion of fetishism of the commodities, Erkenbrecht, 1976, has become one of the cardinal concepts and slogans of the Marxist heritage as applied to the analysis of the relationship between people and products, or between use value and exchange value. Garris sees the origins of this concept in the more fundamental distinction between essence, an example, the real or social relations, and appearance, the outer manifestation of such relations. So essence and appearance. Essence is the real social relations, and appearance is the outer manifestation of such relations. That's a pretty cool distinction there, right? We talk about appearances, right? What about essence is the distinction there, right? He writes, it is because there exists at the interior of capitalist society a kind of internal rupture between the social relations which obtain and the manner in which they are experienced, that the scientist of the society is confronted with the necessity of constructing reality against appearances. Thus, this necessity can no longer be regarded as an arbitrary importation into Marx's own theoretical equipment or something he merely extracted from other pre-existing scientists. It is seen to lead, by short route, to the heart of the notion of fetishism. So Marx sucks anyway, so we don't care. It didn't work for him, but the whole thing is there's the manner in which the relations are experienced, right? Are they being experienced through the essence or through the appearance? And fetishism is the appearance. In short, to invest a commodity with powers which are not present or inherent is to elevate it to the status of a fetish. Now, you can say that about sneakers, right? Once you put a little symbol on there, a semiotic, that's where we get the overlap, right? You have an icon of a swoosh symbol on the side of a commodity, a sneaker made in slave labor. Now, all of a sudden, you've elevated it to the status of something of a fetish. It is in this way that money, or capital in general, comes to be fetishized. Whose concern is with fetishism in television and magazine advertising? Recently reformulated this process in quasi-semiotic parlance when commenting that fetishism consists of seeing the meaning of things as an inherent part of their physical existence, when in fact that meaning is created by their integration into a system of meaning. Earlier, this guy made a similar point when he noted that it is the sanctification of the systems as such, the commodity as a system, that reinforces the fetishist fascination. Say that 10 times fast. The fetish in psychology and sexology. See, these are the words I couldn't put in the description for this video. If you noticed, I was able to use these uncommon words to construct basically the same thing. So those that are in the know, whoever's in the room right now, you are the ones who are bright enough to figure it out. Psychopathia Sexualis, 1886, by the forensic psychiatrist Richard von Krafft-Ebing, contained the first systematic collection of data relating to pathological fetishism. In this text, with its view of sex as perverted and disgusting, came to exert a great, baleful, and seemingly perpetual influence. He wrote extensively of sex crimes and sexual variations or deviations, which he considered based upon genetic defects. As far as I have been able to trace it, it was Krafft-Ebing who first referred to the notion of the fetish as a perversion. That is, something that has required shame and social sanctions to control it. According to his descriptions, a fetish was a non-human object, a part of the body or something contiguous to it, such as clothing, which served as an impetus to sexual arousal and orgasm. The Teutonic doctor, in fact, considered all acts other than marital coitus for the purpose of procreation, and all surrogates for penile vaginal intercourse, for example, voyeurism, exhibitionism, transvestism, gosh, all right, let's try this again. Voyeurism, exhibitionism, transvestitism, sadomasochism as perversions to be reprehended. Yoga pants. All right. Krafft Ebing's method, as illustrated by his report of a case, number 101, of hair fetishism. Yeah, this Krafft Ebing seems like a creep, doesn't he? Should be creep Ebing. Okay, let's read here. His method is illustrated by his report of a case of hair fetishism. This is about Joe Biden, which I cite from Kunzel. Let's see here. Okay. We're still online, right? All right. Let's see. The hair fetishism, which I cite from Kunzel, who, after the French police doctor Paul Garnier's monograph, 1896, uses it to illustrate the degree of moral vindictiveness evinced by authorities and approved by Krafft Ebing. According to this retold story, a 17-year-old boy was watching a show in the Tuileries Gardens while pressing up to a girl whose hair he silently, amorously rolled between his fingers, so softly that she did not even notice. Suddenly, two plainclothes policemen sprang upon him. One seized with his hand the boy's erect penis to his trousers and cried, "At last, we got you, after all the time we've been watching you." The boy was then sentenced to 3 months in jail. Yeah, it sounds like Biden, doesn't it? Except he didn't go to 3 months in jail. I mean, when you're the big guy, you get 10%, right? A standard comprehensive textbook of psychiatry by Friedman, Kaplan, and Sadek, 1972, likewise defines the use of fetishes in explicitly sexual contexts in metonymic terms. So remember, metonymic is when we're using a word that's a name change. So hired gun for a mobster, and etc. The process of achieving sexual excitement and gratification by substituting an inanimate object such as a shoe, a piece of underwear, or other article of clothing for a human love object. Jeez. This definition is substantially repeated under the rubric of other sexual deviations, where only a foot or a lock of hair is added to the enumeration of common sexual fetishes. A recent conspicuous instance of foot fetishism is displayed in Martin Scorsese's short film Life Lessons. This is realized by his cameras or the painter's obsessive dwelling over Rosanna Arquette's feet. In point of fact, it is very common in psychiatric literature to find references to the attraction a patient may have for an inanimate object as inordinate or pathological. Oh, look, I knew they were coming. Shit. Only a matter of time, isn't it? Damn. Can't win. All right. Okay. Jeez. I knew the sex bots were going to come on this stream. It's only a matter of time. All right. Let's get back to it. A recent exchange from the Kinsey Report. A syndicated newspaper column by my colleague, June Reinich, epitomizes the current scientific view of the subject. Question. Oh, Lord. I am a male in my mid-20s. Since age 9, I have been strongly attracted to women's feet, shoes, clothing, and stockings. I became sexually aroused thinking about foot odors. Sometimes I have erections in public places. Do I need to read all this stuff? Here's this. I feel extremely guilty and think most people think I'm perverted. Do you think I'm sick? Do I need professional help? Why am I this way? Answer. I think you should consult with a psychotherapist who is experienced in working with sexual problems. He or she can help you determine exactly what role these desires play in your life. And then the two of you can decide what type of therapy, if any, is necessary for you to form long-lasting close relationships. Fetishism is a behavior in which sexual arousal depends on an inanimate object, a certain body part, or the like. In short, on something other than the whole person. This area has not been fully examined scientifically. Very little is known about the causes of fetishistic behavior, except that it is thought to originate early during psychosocial development. Scientists also don't know how many people have sexual fetishes, but it is clear that this behavior is much more common in men than in women. A variety of body parts, items of clothing, and odors have been mentioned in reports of individual fetishism. I mean, the body parts have to be in line, I would say, in general, right? Oh, man. Yeah, well, exactly. This is a bullshit answer. Remember, this is Kinsey. Come on, man. This is total garbage, syndicated newspaper. So this is just giving us, it epitomizes the current scientific view of the subject. So, yeah, the author is trying to illustrate how bad the perception is in the scientific community regarding this stuff. Yeah, Nubs. I mean, again, what we're doing is the author is trying to give us a view of the landscape that he's dealing with as a scientist, right? That the rest of the community isn't really on the same page. That's the epitome. What we just read is the epitome of the scientific community in the late 80s. It is clear, first of all, that both parties in the exchange view the reported fetishistic comportment as constituting a sexual problem, possibly even a perverted form of behavior, or at least likely to require psychotherapeutic intervention. This is so in spite of Reisnick's concession that very little is known about the causation or ontology of the kind of behavior described. Reinsk also echoes an opinion common among clinicians that fetishism is much more common in men than in women. Oops. If you want. Yep. All right. So let's move on here. This presumption was held by Freud, as well as by Kinsey and his collaborators, who considered fetishism to be an almost exclusively male phenomenon. Yeah, of course, Freud and his epigons, right? His followers, his wannabes, have held that fetishism is the male perversion par excellence. Shore, 1985, put it in a nutshell. Female fetishism is in the rhetoric of psychoanalysis, an oxymoron. Of course, we all know psychoanalysis is mostly bunk. For Shore's subject, George Sand, the female fetish happens to be a wound, but wounds, Shore asserts, are not generally fetishized by men. A questionable claim. Yeah, so you see what we're getting at here? Make sure I'm still online here. We're getting a little edgy here. So, fetishistic attraction to cripples, or more broadly, to discredited individuals who bear stigmata in Goffman's sense, 1963. Hey, we got Joe Cool in the house. Dropping some heavy philosophy. We're on the semiotics, the signs, the meaning of signs, and we're on a chapter about semiotics of fetishes. And we're not promoting any of the stuff we're reading right here. We're getting a view of the landscape of what science has come to try to describe the fetish as, and then we're going to see it from the semiotic point of view and try to make sense of this. That makes a lot more sense than, psychoanalysts and all the other Freudian epigons, or whatever they call them here. Epigons. Okay. Oh, jeez. Fetishistic attraction to cripples, or more broadly, to discredited individuals who bear stigmata in Goffman's sense, as also to one-legged females, and even crutch fetishism, abounds in the literature. All right, before we get to this, anyone know the one-legged female's name? You put it in the chat if you know it. For instance, Morris reports the following case. A young boy was leaning out of a window when his first ejaculation occurred. As it happened, he saw a figure moving past in the road outside, walking on crutches. When he was married, he could only make love to his wife if she wore crutches in bed. Man, this is some wild, weird shit, huh? Nope. Your last one was fun, man. Thanks. Okay, so back to Reinisch implicitly subscribes to the view of the fetish as an essentially indexical sign. So remember, indexical means pointing. It's pointing at something. So the fetish is pointing at something, especially a synecdochical sign. So synecdoche, it's part representing the whole, or vice versa, right? When you say it's the Bears, I mean the Chicago Bears baseball team, but I only say the Bears. I'm talking about. If I say what was the score of the Bears game? Did the Bears win? I mean the Chicago Bears, right? So synecdoche. So synecdochical. Wow. Synecdochical. Really? Never said that word before, but synecdochical. Cool. Bears. Yeah. All right. Something other than the whole person, right? Although, of course, her idiom is other than semiotic. Indeed, the fetish is, as here, commonly regarded as a fixation on the pars pro toto. The most extensive recent study of the fetish in sexology is to be found in John Money's, well, that's a good name, Love Maps, 1986. He once more offers a conventional definition: an object or charm endowed with magical or supernatural power, an object or part of the body charged for a particular person with special sexuerotic power, 1986. In his lemma on fetishism, however, there is a hint of a wider view to which I shall return, when Money points out that there is no technical term for the reciprocal paraphiliac condition in which the fetish, for example, a uniform, must belong to the self. What that means, we'll find out. Mainly, we find in Money's book is a routine catalog of some objects that have been pinpointed by numerous clinicians as typical fetishes. Pornographers fabricate and sell objects, including pictorial and written displays, arranged accordingly to similar categories, designed to cater to every conceivable fetishistic taste. Money classifies tangible objects, or technically imagery, in addition to those appealing to the eye, as either haptic or olfactory, available in immediate perception or in fantasy. The former pertain to feelings of pressure, rubbing, or touch, which may be generated internally as by an animal or other inserted artifact, or externally by the application of fabrics, fur, hair, etc. A tactual token may also be a live creature, oh shit, wriggling and or furry. Thus, in one reported case, okay, oh gosh, a woman habitually placed a dog in her crotch as an adjunct to masturbation and orgasm, but she later oh god, I can't read this. Okay. Leather, example shoes, and rubber or plastic, training pants. Fetishes bridge the gap between touch and smell, as did James Joyce's fetish for soiled knickers. Jeez. Olfactory fetishes characteristically carry the smell of some portion of the human body, especially those garments that cover sexual parts, fecal or urinary odor, odor of sweat, menstrual odor, or smell of lactation. What's the next? Hey, you guys asked for this one. I don't know if dog was one of the ones, but yeah, we're done with this details, these guys. I think we get the idea. I want to get to the semiotics again. Holy shit. There are too many examples here. Yeah, man, this stuff's getting a little... I'm going to get banned if I keep reading this. All right, here we go. The fish, finally. See if this ends with anything good. Okay, we'll read this one last thing here. Oh, geez. All right, we'll read the last sentence. Money itself. Oh, money itself. Now, we're not talking about the author money. We're talking about money. So from this guy. Okay, so let's just see here. Okay, so this looks really readable. Still, other fetishes, as for instance, diamond engagement rings, gold wedding bands, and class rings or pins, and exchanged as tokens of going steady by teenagers, can be taken as indexes overlaid in an erotic frame of reference with a pervasive symbolic significance that is widely understood within a culture, that they're indexes, that ring points to something else. Money itself, or more broadly, property, is commonly reported to turn into capitalistic fetish objects. Yeah, it's some of the stuff was just you got to take it for the time to give the landscape. The author isn't promoting those views, but remember, this is a research paper. Again, it's not to be persuasive. It's to give you the truth from all sides. So at least as he's presenting these ideas here, which are new, you're seeing them in context to the commonly accepted ideas at the time. This is, again, the 90s, late, I guess he wrote this book in the 90s originally. This is second edition. But this chapter itself was written back then. So you got to put us back about 30 years and figure what the landscape was like. And the author's trying to give us a setting of what the landscape was like in the scientific community at the time. And as we can see, it was terrible. So a breath of fresh air comes with the semiotics, so the fetish in semiotics. Finally, I now turn to a fuller consideration of the fetish as a semiotic problem. As can be gleaned even from the discussion thus far, it is clear that a fetish is a sign. Namely, that is, a predominantly indexical sign. In that, moreover, it is, remember, indexical sign is a pointer, indexical sign of the metonymic species. So it's one that's name changing, flipping names of something to what it refers to. Usually a pars pro toto synecdoche in that. So it's, a part is the whole, right? So metonymic means whatever that part is representing the whole. The Bears represent the Chicago Bears, right? The Synecdoche, right, is the that's the Synecdoche, and the metonymic is when you say something like the pig is a tyrant cop. So the characteristics would be in there, and the name change within the characteristics in the metonymic. And the synecdoche is the part, is the whole. Pars pro toto. All right. Okay, so we get going on here. We got some pretty good comments here. Yeah, we had that creeps into, yeah. Yeah. Ain't that the truth? So you see, that's a little bit different than this. That's perverted, not just a fetish. So with this indexical sign is, as a rule, intermingled with both iconic and symbolic elements in various proportions, depending on the context of its use. With respect to the last point, an important consequence of the semiotic model of the fetish is that it is not necessary for the represented object to be fully present to the organism before information about it can influence internal semiosis thought and induce what Peirce called gratific action. In another terminology, a fetish could be regarded as a model, a liquid, but such that this simulacrum is often more potent than the object, a liquo. Wow. That it stands for stat pro. Its reference, renvoi, is, as it were, reminiscent in efficacy to that of a caricature to the subject that it represents. This accords with Morris's. So Morris's was intimate behavior. What? Oh wait, Desmond Morris was. He wanted the Desmond Morris and the intimate behavior. I think I got his book right here somewhere. Intimate behavior, Desmond Morris. Yeah. Okay. Got his book over here too. So that was an interesting one there too. And I think that was The Naked Ape too. He wrote The Naked Ape. A view that the art of caricature is entirely concerned with the process of stimulus extremism. Features exaggerated in caricatures are, as a rule, supernormal equivalents of normal juvenile features or of sexual parts, such as female breasts and buttocks. So caricatures we see all the time, right? They always have accentuated big heads like a baby, or big boobs, or big butts, whatever. As we have seen, the term fetish has hitherto been principally employed in the fields of anthropology and psychiatry, including especially psychoanalysis, and in a narrower, more focused sense, yet quite extensively, in the studies of erotic and sexual behavior in humans. The notion of fetish has to do, in all these conceptions, with an obsessive maintenance of self-image. To my knowledge, thus far, only Christian Metz, 1985, has reflected on the fetish in chiefly semiotic terms, but even he has done so only in a strictly circumscribed technical environment, namely in relation to photography. Metz feels that because of the two features' relatively small size and possibility of a look that may linger, a photograph, as opposed to the cinematic lexis, is better fit or more likely to work as a fetish. That is to say, as something that signifies both loss, Freudian symbolic castration, which is metaphoric, and protection against loss, which is metonymic. However, let me here set aside the matter of the photographic as fetish, which Metz then ingeniously relates to death, or the fear of death, and the conversation, embodied as looking, glancing, gazing, watching, waiting. Was it watching, waiting, following, and hating? Instead, I would prefer briefly to review and ponder the implications of the more relevant ethological problem variously dealt with under such headings as the supernormal signal stimulus or the superoptimal sign. The point I want to make about such signs was neatly captured by Oscar Wilde's celebrated aphorism from A Woman of No Importance, Act 3. Nothing succeeds like excess. Itself anticipated by Shakespeare's lines, to gild refined gold, to paint the lily, to throw perfume on the violet, is wasteful and ridiculous excess. Yeah, to gild refined gold, to paint the lily, yeah, to throw perfume on the violet. Get it? In short, a sign is deemed supernormal when it surpasses a normal sign in its effectiveness as a releaser, meaning the discharge of appropriate behavior. We got some good words going here. According to Guthrie's 1976, is that Arlo Guthrie? Excellent account of the anatomy of social organs and behavior, so-called supernormal signs occur in the form of extra-large social organs. An example, increasing signal strength by increasing signal amplitude. Thus, in certain species of animals, antlers and horns are used as an estimation of rank. They therefore either grow to gigantic size among the older males, or develop specialized modifications like filling in between the tines to form palms, thereby increasing the visual effect from a distance. The releaser of the discharge. Exactly. All right. So, in particular, these other anal and genital organs are just those about which mankind harbors so many taboos, tend to become modified into semiotic organs for several reasons. In part, because mammals, having in general a well-developed smelling apparatus, tend to use feces and urine as part of their signaling behavior. Who is where and when? Yeah, we got some crazy stuff going on here. And in part, because of the sexual overtones of a different mammalian ways of urination. Genitalia have frequently acquired heavy semiotic import and have become ritualized into a set of signs conveying oppositions such as maleness, femaleness, or aggression, submission, while having also been elaborated into specialized social ornamentation that is residually related to their ancestral copulatory role. Yeah, we're getting some great words here. This author is definitely on point. Oh, goodness. Understand this, that this is a cold scientific breakdown of the scientific climate to kind of give it a readjustment back to rationality, if you will be, as kind of a shift towards this science-based thing instead of the craziness of psychoanalysts and Freud and Marx and all the nonsense we've been reading about. Let's continue. The phenomena of the supernormal stimulus object has been demonstrated many times in studies of animal behavior, especially in one exemplary piece of work by Tinbergen and Purdick. In brief, these two investigators, among other interesting achievements, found they could devise a supernormal stimulus object consisting of an artificial model in which some sign aspects are exaggerated relative to the natural object. Such a supernormal stimulus was provided by a long red knitting needle with 3 white rings near the tip. In the event, this was more effective than a naturalistic head and bill of an adult gull in evoking a pecking response from herring gull chicks. Yeah, let's get that. Let's move along. You're gonna have too many things here. We need to get to the conclusion of this because this is not the path I wanted to go down. But it's by popular demand last night that it was unanimous. They wanted this chapter. Lorenz gives many examples of art and form fashion from the production of such super optimal dummies, pinpointing those characters which are exaggerated for this purpose. Other instances are listed and discussed by Morris. Desmond Morris, that's again the, all right. Okay, so let's get here we are. This is it. This is our conclusion. Finally. Yeah, we're getting there. We're almost there, Dogma. You're going to get a trophy for this one for sure. Space with hibernate. I think it's a wrong verb. In this perspective, what, in the literature of the erotic and sexological, is called a fetishistic attachment may be viewed as a form of mal-imprinting. As Morris, writes, most of us develop a primary pair bond with a member of the opposite sex, rather than with fur gloves or leather boots. But the fetishist, firmly imprinted with his unusual sexual object, tends to remain silent on the subject of his strange attachment. The fetishist becomes isolated by his own highly specialized form of sexual imprinting. So that's the sexological interpretation. So what we look at here is, let's see what he argues. I would argue that fetish is not just a supernormal sign, a misplaced response, if you will, standing for and indeed amplifying a process of ritualization, some natural object upon which an individual has become preferentially imprinted in lieu of the object itself. For more likely mechanisms, see this guy. But this definition requires a considerable expansion of the concepts of fetish and of fetishism to encompass erotic aestheticism in general, as well as positive attachments which can only be by interpretive extension, if even then be considered erotic, e.g. saints' relics or a rabbit's foot charm. Remember rabbit's feet? Yep. Yeah, we really went down the rabbit hole here. Literally, the what is it? Jesus. That great word that we had, fecundity. The rabbits are a rabbit is very fecundate. Fecundate. Fecundity. You just got to think of like the word fecundity, because that's kind of what it means. Immense ability to produce many new ideas, or a lot of offspring. Okay, so we kind of get it here. What he's saying here is that it's basically a positive attachment, right? And it's an interpretive extension, can be considered erotic only by an interpretive extension, right? So it's a preferential imprinted in lieu of the object itself, right? So it's a ritualization, amplifying a process of ritualization is what he's really arguing fetish is. So again, we're talking about degrees. So here's where we come full circle to what the author, Seebeck, is saying here is that he's viewing it, he would argue that it's not just a supernormal sign, but a misplaced response, and it's indeed amplifying, so degrees of amplification, by a process of ritualization and repetition, right? And some natural object upon which an individual has become preferentially imprinted in lieu of the object itself. But this definition requires a considerable expansion of the concepts of fetish and of fetishism to encompass erotic aestheticism in general, as well as the other positive attachments which can only be interpretive extension, if even then be considered erotic, which are, again, the dashboard saints, bearing your St. Jude, and rabbit's feet. So, yeah, so that's it's fecundity. No, it's fecundity. Fecund. Almost. You know where we're getting freaky. Fat rabbits for all. Oh, you get the rabbits in the hibernation layer? Well, that's not good. Usually you keep guinea pigs in the hibernation layer, because then they're good eating when you need them. Yeah. Hey, who said we didn't? Yeah, we someone voted on this stuff here. All right, so I think we somehow survived this brutal chapter. Oh man, I don't know if I think we all need a cold shower after that one. But I'd say this much is that I'd say the thing I've gleaned the most from this long chapter here is the fact that it needs a lot more knowledge about the definitions of fetish. It's been it seems like it's been abused for capitalistic purposes and for the psychoanalysts and the other kinds of those kind of crazies to find ways to drag people into therapy for things that probably have nothing to do with other than just a obsession or an amplification, as he says here, of process of ritualization. And it's just a, what do you call it, a misplaced response, right? And it can come in degrees. So I think, again, it's a big leap to take the erotic perspective of fetish when you're relating it to the semiotic perspective. And I think that's what we learned from this, that all the garbage we read was there just to belabor the point that they're all full of shit, that none of those definitions can suffice, and that the best thing he would argue is just a supernormal sign. So at that, I'd say that that Siebeck was basically marginalizing the whole concepts of fetishism, and as just another supernormal sign or other form of semiotic that just has overlapping of the varieties of or species of semiotics of signs. So again, those species, we'll look at them real quick before we end the stream here, just as a quick review so we can leave with the most important aspect here, the 6 species of signs, right? So we have signal, symptom, icon, index, symbol, and name. So those are our 6 species. So we saw the overlapping ones of index and symbol and icon with fetishism, and it seems like that's all it really was. And if you look at it like that, it's really not a classification at all. It's just misplaced representations, and it may or may not have any kind of functional effect on the organism. All right, so I had a break in the stream there. Let's see. All right, good night, Nubs. Yep. Anyhow, yeah, what I wanted to say was the just lost it for a second there off the stream there. So this is it. The semiosis, if we look at this basic work here, we get the basic notions of semiotics. It's the sign, and not just the sign, but it's the way of us understanding the difference between illusion and reality. And the various ways that we are able to explore this is through the concept of semiotics and signs. And see, this is a major distinction between us and the other animals, is that some of the types of signs that we use, especially the symbolic one of language, that really sets us apart. But here we get the interesting way that other animals, and we even found that subcellular organelles utilize semiotics in a chemical communication, which is nonverbal. And we also learned that verbal communication can be sign language, something that doesn't include actual sound. So interesting concepts. I think from that being said, we learned quite a bit from this. I like the idea that Thomas Siebeck is just your typical philosopher of the day, smoking a pipe. So it's a really nice image there to leave with. And on that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And next one, we'll get back on track with some of the regular content I do. I thought this was a nice little diversion here. Originally, the semiotics was just to get the concept of semiotics, and I somehow got ambushed into straying off down this rabbit hole of the fetishism aspect of it. But it still was a pretty interesting lesson and journey. So I appreciate all you coming along with me. And I hope to see y'all on the next one. At that, I would say peace out.